Yeah, we're running a little bit late.
A little, entirely, extremely late. The most late I've ever been.
But that's fine. You live in a car, so you can't control these things. There's traffic, there's parking.
You know, there's traffic even inside the mind.
Exactly.
That prevents normal functioning. And
we're here with Deep Left Analysis, a substacker who talks about neoliberal elitism, and you have you talk about a lot about politics.
I do.
Yeah,
And
give me the elevator pitch.
yeah, elevator pitch us.
Elevator pitch.
Of the deep left.
The elevator pitch of the deep left. Well, everybody knows, I mean, let's just start with humor, right? Everybody knows that, like, the left is just not as funny as it was. You go back to the 1990s, it was like Bill Maher. It's like George Carlin. Like, basically any funny person was, liberal, leftist, whatever. At some point along the line, sort of flip side, I think Sam Hyde with Adult Swim was a big watershed moment for that. It was like 2013. They discovered this guy somehow. I don't even know the story, but they didn't even know he was like a Nazi or something crazy. They were just like, oh, this guy's really funny. And then, through a series of events, he got canceled, and now he is where he is today. But I think that whole arc of comedy where conservatives kind of went from lame and very, like, George Bush was like Southern focused. If there was conservative comedy, it was always like rednecks and hicks and things like that. And it really transitioned into a different mode. So that's where I'd start, is just like irony and humor, understanding that transition. What did the left lose? What did the right gain? And I think it is this, it is about taboo. It is about whether you are, an authoritarian mentally. Maybe not in your politics, but...
like low openness.
Yeah, there's openness, there's conformity, conscientiousness, all of these personality traits. There's a psychological profile of somebody who likes change, who likes revolution, who likes to buck the system and the parents and the authority. And so that's powerful when you can tap into that, because basically all the mythology we have going back to ancient Greece and even ancient Egypt or whatever, that element is present. And that's what I call the deep left. It's not about gay marriage or abortion or any of these specific issues, although they all do tie back into like some tree formation with those ideologies. But that deep left is like at the most fundamental core, like, do you want to be, the guy who rides in on a winged horse and like destroys the entrenched order of like, the earth cults and the matriarchy and whatever? Do you want to like smash that and bring in something completely new and space age and rocket ship?
Yeah.
And I think that to me is what the deep left is. Now, how does that relate to like superficial day-to-day politics of the last 20 years? That's a very long, circuitous path. And sometimes it gets a little bit contradictory.
That's a good elevator pitch. Shows that you're like riding in and you're destroying all these bad concepts on the left and you're making these new ones.
Well, you're also, you're viewing that we have an entrenched, established left, a neoliberalism that has become very boring, that once was very sexy.
Yeah.
Like
That's
Beatles.
why I hate neoliberalism. Yawn. We've had it for too long. I want something new. I want something more exciting.
I agree. That's basically the only thing there is to do, is bring back sex on the left. We need... and the thing is, people use this term sex positive, and I think it's a very insidious term, because the people who are advocating for it and talking about it are some of the least sexy people imaginable.
Yeah.
So there's this dissection of sex that you're viewing it like a medical experiment. So first there's a legal bureaucracy you have to go through about consent. And then finally, once you get through that, it's like we have this cornucopia of paraphilias. I mean, you had the video about all the fetishes, like Wikipedia list. It's like, okay, maybe there were some people watching that video of yours having a very good time with themselves, but I think most people were just laughing, they're giggling, it's goofy.
Yeah.
And there is a dichotomy between, being goofy and being sexy. And it's, of course, you can't be humorous and sexy at the same time, but being humorous and sexy is about making fun of other people and being sexy. It's not about being a goofy person. If people are laughing at you, that's not sexy.
Yeah.
Right? So there is this self-seriousness on the left where it's become so, it's just like church lady-esque. It's like, don't do this, don't do that, nagging everybody. Yeah, no one is attracted to that. It's not dangerous. So there needs to be some danger. There needs to be some vitality. And yeah, how do you bring that back? How do you create that transformation? You first have to just admit what the problem is. And until you get to that core of it, people are going to be around the edges of like, how do we get more young men in the Democratic Party? And if you're asking the question on that superficial level, and then you're like...
A question we've asked many times.
Right. So it's like you ask that question, but without any deeper consideration. I think I don't even know the name of this woman, but she was like this, she's this plus size, like college age girl. And she's like,
queen.
She's like
plus size queen.
Yeah. I mean, look, I have nothing against the girl, but she's like, oh, I love frats. I love fraternities. I love frat bros, but but the thing is, you may love frat bros, but frat bros, in order for them to want to be Democrats, they have to see like an ideal that they are embodying. That it's not enough to say, oh, we love you. That's great. Like DaBaby just made this video about that Ukrainian woman who got stabbed. And he does this like revisionism alternative history fanfic where he like stops the stabber. And I was like, thank you, DaBaby. Like, we need more of that, right? So we need more people on the left reaching out to an extremely important demographic, which is these young, predominantly white men who have, and not just white men, but also Hispanic men, Muslim men. It doesn't matter what kind of men you look at. They're all fleeing the Democratic Party. So it's one thing to just say like, hey, we like you guys. We don't hate you. Like, you're welcome here. But then the more important thing is to actually have figures who say like, we embody the Democratic Party. We embody those values as a man, as a young white man, as whatever. And so people have talked about like, we need leftist Joe Rogan, but you also kind of need like leftist Nick Fuentes.
Yes.
And
I tweeted that. We need a leftist Nick Fuentes.
Yeah, it's exactly true. You need a leftist Nick Fuentes. And unfortunately, Vaush, Hassan, I think the problem with those guys is that, there's a big coalition on the left. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party has been having trouble with the Hassan Vaush aspect of the coalition. Not that they can't be helpful, not that they can't work together, but sometimes, and you saw it in the last election with, specifically Muslim voters in swing states, kind of like not wanting to vote for Democrats. And so, they're entitled, and look, Israel, Gaza, it's a complicated issue, but in the main, like, you have to have someone, because Joe Rogan ultimately is not like far right.
Yeah.
Like you talk about weed, you talk about Christianity, you talk about all these issues. It's like, he's not a far right guy. He'll bring on Bernie Sanders. He'll talk to people on the left. And so you need someone like that on the left who is not like, I'm so hardcore, like everybody who disagrees with me on this is a genocidal fascist, whatever. You need someone who's legitimately like, will talk across the aisle, just kind of get along with everybody. Even if you don't agree with him, you're like, he's still a cool guy.
Right.
So that personality, and the problem with that is it's easy to say that, but then there's this series of attitudes that I've alluded to with humor and sexiness where it's very difficult to actually embody that. And so there is currently a sort of an Overton window that's somewhat quasi-ideological, it's somewhat personality-based, somewhat cultural-based, and people just need to start like banging at the walls of that box and starting to smash through. And people have to be willing to make mistakes and say things and do things that are wrong. And so, from my perspective, it means like you need to like take have you guys played Pokemon?
Yeah.
And you feed your Pokemon berries and it increases its charisma and all. It's like this star chart. And so you see all these different aspects of where you could go. And so, you look at the star chart of the Democrat Party and it's like, well, you got the feminist aspect, you got the racial justice aspect, you got the immigration, you got all those aspects. And what I'd like to see is basically in the same way that like, Nick Fuentes, he's like, on the right, he's like really into the Catholicism. And Joe Rogan, he's like really into aliens or something like that. It's like, I would like to see more leftists who are like, I'm differentiating myself by just being like wacky on one thing,
Right.
and kind of moderate on the other things,
Yeah.
and sort of testing the waters and seeing what works. So more experimentation and more tolerance of that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So like in the same way, like Nick Fuentes, his
Yeah.
hyperfixation is the Jews.
Yes. The
We
Jews.
could have someone on the left whose hyperfixation is, I don't know, what's an example?
Well, yeah.
What, smashing matriarchy? Is that-
Yeah, I mean, I think that so this is kind of the thing about the deep left is it's trying to appropriate a lot of right-wing attitudes or themes or energies and then sort of repackaging that. And that's already been happening to an extent.
Yeah.
Like a lot of memes, like you go down the list of like Incel, Pepe the Frog. I mean, there's just like a ton of memes that started off on 4chan on poll boards on the right wing and then got appropriated by the left. Catherine D actually had an interesting article recently about this phenomenon of like trans people with respect to 4chan, of it being sort of a breeding ground of like anti-trans memes, but also a place where a lot of people were browsing 4chan and they were like, huh, I've never heard of this trans thing before.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm trans.
Yeah.
So there's this ironic
And
thing.
that's where stuff like passoid comes from. Great word. Passoid.
Passoid is
Yeah.
a great
The
word.
LGBT board on 4chan has been great for political lingo like this.
Yeah.
I know like 2 fascist trans women.
Yeah.
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 They're all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, I went to an immigration protest here in Toronto, and, you know.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to finish your point, but I
Yeah.
watched so many videos of that online and tried to get the story because I
Right.
wanted to go to that, but I had to work.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to finish your story and then kind of go into that.
Oh,
how
yeah,
this all
no, I
played
was just
out.
going to say, I went to it, and there were 2 sides, and the leftist side was, like, pretty unhappy. Like, I was just going up to people and being like, hey, because I had a cameraman with me, I was like, hey, immigration, pro or against? And people would just be like, no, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And, you know, I got some of that on both sides, but there was a lot more on the leftist side, and there was a lot more just like hostility. Like I walked over to the leftist side and I just like quietly said to my friend, like, oh man, doesn't look like there's a lot of conflict over here. And then someone just like came up to me and was like, are you trying to start conflict? Do you want conflict? I was like, no, we're like looking to document.
That's
to
really
see-
and take this how you will.
Yeah.
But you have sort of like a gay affliction that's very disarming. Like I feel like you have that superpower where you could say anything. Do you know what I'm talking about?
if I really turn it on.
Yeah.
No one will
Whoa.
ever be
Holy
mad at
shit.
me,
Yeah,
ever.
You could just start saying the N word. I'd be like, okay.
Well,
I just want to
on this
listen.
podcast,
it's
but
like
we
the
could
no
do
cap
it.
all gas. What's his name?
Oh.
No
Yeah,
cap
yeah,
on
yeah.
God. Yeah.
No
Yeah,
cap
yeah.
on. Yeah. He can just say whatever he wants.
Because he's
Right.
gay. He's got the gay inflection.
Right.
Yeah.
So
But that's
I-
surprising to you. They were after you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that when I look at the aesthetics of the left and I look at where I'm at and I look at the right-wing side, you know, there were trans people over there. And I talked to them and I was like, are you on this side? And they're like, I'm not on either side, but, you know, I just feel more comfortable right now being on this side.
Interesting.
And then I asked them, like, what are your beliefs? And they were like, oh, maybe Israel killed Charlie Kirk. And I was like, okay, well, maybe you really do belong on this side. But I don't know. The fact that if people weren't holding Canadian flags on the anti-immigrant side, I wouldn't be able to tell because there were so many multiracial couples and so many Jewish people and just all kinds of people that, and I think that is part of the Canadian right wing more so than the American right wing. And there were some like frat bros and people screaming death to communism and stuff like that. There's maybe like 10 people
It's
doing
just
that.
very Canadian for you to go and like they're like so averse to conflict that like their conflict with you is like, are you trying to start conflict? Trying to make us look bad by having conflict? When what we want these guys to kill each other. So I was very disappointed by that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I spent a lot of time, like, when I would get in a conversation with somebody, I think I did like 45 minutes with just one guy, just to like deeply go into it with him. Because nobody I would talk to on the anti-immigration side would say I'm against immigration. They would say I'm just against mass immigration.
Yeah.
They want a
like-
lower number.
Yeah, I was like, what number good?
What's the number? And they can't give you a number.
Yeah, they can't give the number.
Yeah.
But no,
I can give you a number.
Well, give me a number.
Zero.
Zero.
No.
Yeah.
Whatever pre-2019 numbers. Immigration in Canada from 1980 to 2019 was the exact same. Only after 2019 it skyrocketed. But I believe for 40 years it was $400K a year, and it was really varied. 2019 is when only Punjab, and it starts skyrocketing. Everyone's issue with immigration is hundreds of thousands of Punjabis. It's not immigration because, sorry, the little autistic tangent. The second biggest immigration group in Canada, by far, nearly as much as Indians is Filipino. And nobody fucking complains about Filipinos. Catholic, hardworking, nice people. They integrate really well into Canadian society.
Yeah.
So
I'm pro mass deportations for 3 people. 1, the guy that bullied me in high school. Get him out. 2, Zatzman.
I gotta go.
Get out of here. Wait, we got a bit of an audience forming, so if you guys want to come in the back, that's totally fine. But yeah, I want to mass deport anyone who wronged me personally. Everyone else is fine. You don't believe in this concept of a nation, though, do you? You're one of these globalist, neoliberal elitists.
Yeah, I'm a globalist. So, there's a couple of positions when it comes to nationalism and globalism. And one of them is this increasing idea of like isolationism, like, imperialism was a bad idea, colonialism was a bad idea, everyone should have just stayed where they were. And even if you can ignore basically all of human history where that never actually happened, and you just say like, okay, what if everyone stayed where they were? Wouldn't that have been better? Wouldn't there have been less conflict? And I don't believe that. I think that we live in Canada. Canada is, whether you call it immigration, colonialism, whatever, Canada is vastly different than what it was. I think it's better. I think that I would rather live in Canada in 2025 than Canada in 1500.
Sure.
And so I think that, in general, are there costs? Are there conflicts, cultural disagreements that come about when lots of people move from different cultures to other cultures? Of course there are. I think it is still an ideal that should be strived for. So I understand that there is a cost, but I think that the cost is short-term, the benefit's long-term.
Yeah.
And so it's like anything. Like, let's say you have a kid and you're like, hey, kid, I need to, take you to school or give you medicine. There's so many things you tell kids and they just freak out and they're crying. They don't want to do it. And so you always, as a parent, you have to be like, am I going to give into this tantrum? Am I going to force the kid to do the thing? And I think that's kind of how I view these freakouts over immigration. It's like, at the end of the day, the statistics are not there in terms of like, this is causing mass violence or this is causing chaos or this is destroying civilization. Even historically, you want an example of Sparta. Majority of people in Sparta weren't Spartans, And so the idea that even if you are on the furthest right, fascist, whatever, the idea that like people merely existing in your territory is going to destroy, like if you're a minority, everything's just going to fall apart. That's not necessarily true. Now, there's a question about, democratic norms. If people just come in and they're voting for whoever, that is a big question mark. And I'm not only a globalist, I'm also an elitist. So rather than just having like mass populism, I would rather have a political system where our institutions are really strong. Like, I like colleges, I like universities, I like smart people. I like the fact that like Anthony Fauci is the guy who's in charge of vaccines, and we don't just like vote every year on what we think about science.
A bit of a technocracy, would you say?
Well, the thing
Ruled
about
by the people who know their way around the tech that they're describing or their expertise.
So I think technocracy is an interesting word, and I have an article about this, and I go into what the word means, and I think that it's one thing to say that smart people are good and do good things, but I think there is ultimately a mistake that can be made when you only think that the smartest person is the best person for the job.
Oh, I've been on this beat.
Right. So you can't. I don't think that the majority is always right, but I also don't think the smartest person is always right.
Okay, yeah, because there's a lot of these high IQ retards.
Yes, correct. They are indeed high IQ retards. But specifically, and we do this a lot in Anglo culture, is instead of calling people cowardly or reticent or overly cautious or overly emotional, all those really bad traits for decision making, we just call them stupid.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
And it creates a lot of semantic confusion. So there are people who have very high verbal intelligence or mathematical ability who, when it comes to decision making, their heuristic is always to minimize risk. So this happened with COVID, right?
Yeah.
It was like, oh, there's a deadly disease and it could kill hundreds of thousands of people. We better crash the economy for a year. That's actually not a good idea because when you crash the economy, people lose their life savings, they become poorer, they commit suicide, they have less access to healthcare. A lot of people who needed cancer screening didn't get that screening. Now they're dead. So just whenever there's, and I would say the same thing with immigration, right? You got a bunch of people coming in, that's risky. But when you shove all those people out, or you deport them, or you stop them from coming in, you're not seeing the opportunity cost of all the good that could have come from that. And again, economics and human lifespans at this point, I mean, medical technology has come to the point where literally, cash is your lifespan.
Yeah.
So in a sense, when we do these things that are like, oh, well, we need to spend $1 trillion to save the old people to have them live one extra year of life or something.
Yeah, Jesus.
You don't realize that there are potentially millions of, starving children or preventable diseases who are dying because of that decision.
Yeah.
So, this kind of like risk avoidance mentality that we have, that's just like, oh, people die bad. It's not looking at the bigger picture of the fact that, and again, I am a globalist. So if you have a 90-year-old and we could spend $1 trillion to get them to 91 versus for the same amount of money, you could, provide clean drinking water and vaccines and stuff to people around the world. I really think that's the better thing to do.
Day of the pillow.
Day of the pillow. Now, the problem is like, I really get to that point with people because they meme it into reality. Because if I say like, okay, grandpa who has $500,000 in equity shouldn't be getting a social security check or a pension.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, so you just want to kill old people? And I'm like, well, I never said that, but if you insist.
Well, the worst is the property taxes in Toronto. You have people who are sitting in $1 million homes now that they bought in 1958, and they're paying property tax on an $80,000 house.
It's crazy.
It's fucking insane that like just by the virtue of like buying a house in the 60s here, you are now basically like a millionaire in equity.
Are you guys Georgist pilled? Do you know?
Yeah, 100. We had the world's most foremost Georgist on this podcast.
That's awesome.
Ex-Maoist child soldier.
Yeah, I really fucking hate hearing all this, and it's all like Trump coded now for some reason. All these people are like, no taxes on Social Security, and we shouldn't have to pay property tax. I paid this off when I was 20, and now I'm 80 years old. It's like, my patience is, so I call it neoliberal Stalinism.
Yes, neoliberal Stalinism.
This is what we need.
This one.
So unfortunately, if you think the Israel lobby is the biggest lobby, no, they're 10 times bigger. We have the old people lobby. It's called AARP in America, and they have never lost an election. Anytime that they have lobbied for or against somebody, they always win. Wow. They have the most money, the most people. It's like 55 million fucking people in America, AARP. And old people vote the most, which is crazy. So
the elderly are the real Jews.
They're 10 times worse.
10 times the Jew a Jew could be. But it's true. It's even like civic politics when there's like some weird fucking bylaw thing in your small town. Go in and like vote on that. Go into the fucking meeting. Yeah. It's 50 people over 80.
Because they're retired. Their full-time job is trying to control young people, which they do through politics. And so they are stealing all the young people's money. And literally, if you are wondering why the cost of housing is so high, and people think it's because of immigration, it's not. That's like 1% of the problem, and it's a very temporary one, because immigrants come in, they provide construction labor, they actually lower the cost of housing. Old people, they don't work, right? They're not building houses, they're staying in houses.
I'm radicalized. I am elite human
Get
capital.
Radical. Get radical.
This is what Brogan was saying when he broke his foot.
Oh, did I tell you?
I am elite human capital.
Yeah, the ER story.
I'm competing with these elderly motherfuckers.
I know it's fucked up. An 80-year-old is not worth the same as me. I'm sorry, but it's true.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, there comes a point where math is real, and if we just continue to subsidize the elderly at the rate we're doing, there's a cost. That money comes from somewhere. It comes from young people. When young people are like, why can't I move into the city? Why can't I get a job? Why is college so expensive? Why is healthcare so expensive? They're asking all these questions, and it's literally because we have a massive wealth transfer from young people to old people at the start of life. Think about this 50 years ago. If you went up to people and you say, we're going to construct a society in which at the age of 22, you have $100,000 in debt, you can't get a job, you have to work as a barista, and old people just have infinite money. What do you think? Like, would anyone vote for that? No. Obviously not. No. Like, if you had asked the people when FDR created Social Security, whatever, Lyndon Johnson expanded it, they were never selling it like that. No one was ever sold that. Of course, we've had this birth rate decline, and a lot of people say, oh, we'll just have more babies. Okay, well, that's literally never happened except after a collapse of civilization.
Right.
So unless you're proposing, a collapse of civilization. I'd much rather, we just shut down the government for a few years, maybe a few months, depending, and just say, look, we're going to gut this system. At the very least, this is a plausible argument for immigration, is you could say, if you are an immigrant, you and maybe your descendants, you can look into the math on it, but at least you never get pensions, you never get Social Security. And so people coming in, it's like, you're kind of consenting to that deal, right? You come into the country, you realize like, okay, I'm never going to get this thing. And so then if we just replace total demographic replacement of the population, we just flood everyone with immigrants, then technically we would outmode Social Security. We would get rid of that.
I'm radicalized. Okay, we need a new Doge. It's called Destroy Old Geezers.
Execution style.
Yes, I'm all for it. But then I imagine my parents dying, and I think, wait, maybe not.
No. So the thing is, it's like you need the fire in your heart, but at the end of the day, it really the hysteria that old people bring to the table, where it's like, you're trying to take away my money, or are you trying to kill me? It's like nobody is actually trying to kill you. We are very upset at the fact that you are stealing all the money.
We're just trying to let you die.
Well, no, the thing is, there are houses selling in Kansas right now for $50,000. We could say to all these old people, I don't want any of them to die. I just want them to move.
Right.
Get the fuck out of the city. So you do not need to live in a city.
Sort of like a Nakba of the old.
Yes, we need
a trail of tears of elderly people.
The only mass deportations we need are the mass deportations of old people to Kansas.
Wow.
That's all we need.
Interesting.
I think if we build that's a giant retirement community, and then the heroin camp as well for the crackheads to get them out.
So you are now getting into abolishing prisons. Is that we don't need these concrete barred structures. What we need is giant reservations for criminals of all stripes. Now, some of these can be within, I call it the Nevada Corporation. There's a lot of land in Nevada. You could take criminals and you could say, look, you can go outside, you can have sex, you can invite your friends and family in if you want to. You're not going to be in a little cage, but you are going to be away from other people, because nobody wants to live around, as you said, homeless people, crackheads, whatever, thieves, whoever. So they're going to be in their own little society. If it's bad enough, what we do is we go to third world countries to say, hey, you guys need money. We got criminals. This has kind of been done a little bit with Bukele, but the idea is to avoid putting people in cages because it's just cruel and unusual. It's actually a thing that was started by Christians, like the Romans never had prisons, the Babylonians, whatever, Persians never had prisons. That was something invented as the idea was it was like monastery simulator for moral improvement. This is how prisons were invented. So we know now that doesn't work. We know now that putting people in prisons with a bunch of other criminals actually just creates prison gangs and makes people more criminal. So instead of doing that, you say like, okay, Haiti, we would like to purchase, 10,000 acres of land from you, and then we'd like to create this little prisoner reservation. We can have a nice big wall around it.
You've been saying this. You've been saying this for homeless people. Like
heroin camp.
Yeah, but put them in a heroin camp, but don't put them in jail. Give them a daycare.
Give them a reservation. Yes, exactly. And we can airdrop in food and water and have safe, whatever they need. So it can be much, much more humane. Because honestly, these people out on the streets, they're not living good lives or whatever. And we are not enjoying seeing them very much. But we could create a sort of amusement park where they all live, and we could go visit them if we want.
Yeah, they're like, what happened to that homeless guy on the street? He's in a farm now.
Yes.
And he's actually in a farm.
Yes.
What happened to my grandmother?
This is kind of why I'm really against localism, is because if you look at San Francisco, they spend $90,000 per homeless person. Now, has that solved the homelessness crisis? No. But again, if they were in Kansas, you could literally build them a house and give them all the food and clothing and porn and whatever else they need for a year on that $90,000. The reason why they haven't solved homelessness in San Francisco is because housing in San Francisco costs a lot more than $90,000 a year. So as a result of that, they're all homeless people are attracted to these big liberal democratic cities because that's where all the funding is, because the funding is local and it stays within the city. But if you had a national system where it's like, we have a federal homelessness fund, and if you are homeless, sign up here. We will put you on a bus to Kansas. You will get your own house. You will get food. You will get medical care. You will get all this free stuff. And we can do it for much, much cheaper than by keep attracting these people, holding them up basically in these big blue cities.
Interesting. You're going to be the metaphorical tornado that whisks up all the hobos and old people and brings them to Kansas.
Exactly. It's going to be, I'm basically Dorothy or the Wizard of Oz or some fusion of the two. And we are going to whisk everybody away.
Well, saving the immigration debate, because we are going to have you debate Quentin
depth.
of the book club, which 20 people are shitting and pissing about.
So
we'll save any more immigration talk for that specific debate, which is coming up soon. Do we want to talk about leftist violence?
Yeah. This is because we just did a short podcast on our thoughts about Charlie Kirk, but I'm interested because I agree with you. I don't think I assuming. He spoiled your opinion for me.
Alex Nowrasta, libertarian over at the Cato Institute, did, and I've grilled him on this because I keep posting his graphs and people are grilling me and they're like, "What about BLM? What about this? What about that?" And he's like, "Look through all this stuff. It's like there's 19 to 25 people who died, quote unquote, in the BLM riots. Of those people, the majority were shot by property owners defending their property." So that's a little bit different from leftist violence. Even if you are to count that and you just look at the graph over time, it is a blip. It is a small blip in 1 year that does not indicate any sort of trend.
Yeah.
If you want to go back to the 1960s and 70s, you'll find there were like 2,500 bombings by the Weather Underground, these communists were. We totally forget about that.
Yeah.
We totally erase that from memory, but that was real. That happened. They didn't kill a lot of people because they didn't want to. And we have the communications from them. We have all their documents or whatever. They intentionally bombed police statues and buildings or whatever at 5 a.m. when no one was there because they didn't want to kill people. They just wanted to make a statement. It was an advertising thing for them, as a recruitment thing for them. So obviously I don't condone bombing stuff, but they were intentionally not trying to kill people. And yes, they bombed 2,500 times. And the death counts was maybe in the dozens or something. It was a very small number of people killed. A lot of those people were accidentally killed, unfortunately. But the point is that even if you're see, the left is so violent because of the 1970s, if your claim is that there is a wave of violence and Charlie Kirk is a point on that wave and it's going up, it's a linear progression up, then if you're going to also talk about the 1970s, then you include that data and it's actually a wave going down. It's actually totally died down. The leftists become, you look up Huey P. Newton and Malcolm X and Nation of Islam and all those hardcore black nationalist types, Weather Underground, all those people, way, way, way more violent than what we have today. So the left is totally chilled out in comparison to that. Yeah. And even that, we lived through the 1970s. America did not collapse. We did not all die. Yeah, there were violent race riots. There was crazy stuff going on. But, there's also a lot of good stuff going on. So, my opinion is I like risky culture. I like dangerous culture. It doesn't mean I want to live in Somalia or something. But I do think that, being lenient and being tolerant and just being okay, some people rioted and some people died. Okay, but in the larger picture of things, 10,000 people died this year from car crashes. And how many people died from suicide and drugs and all of these things? I just believe we should put things in proportion, not be so hysterical. I think the reason why people are hysterical is because they desperately love and want violence. Humans are attracted to this. And so they're trying to meme it into the reality. They're first they're going to shoot Charlie Kirk. Then literally every leftist, your college professor and that girl who works at Starbucks, they're literally going to come and kill you. Because they all, we have the poll, J.D. Vance is 25% of leftists want to kill you. It's that is not true.
I've had some crazy Twitter interactions the last week because I'm not even that left. And people were accusing me of wanting to kill white men.
Yeah.
It's just
Wait, were you responding to them?
There was one guy who I made a very clear point to explain very clearly. And I was no, I sent him paragraphs. And at the end I had neutralized him. He was okay, I misunderstood you. I'm glad there's a sane voice. We had a very nice interaction.
I've had the same exact conversation over and over.
Yeah.
And it's it's really frustrating, but I don't know. I think that in some ways it's not what is happening right now. While it is kind of sick and twisted, the way that people are hyping up violence and trying to meme it into reality, because the right wing are always, they're the hold me back bros. They're oh, you want to mess? Hold me back, bro. We have all the guns. We could kill you any day. We're going to execute Anthony Fauci. They've been doing this. This is their modus operandi. well, I would never start a civil war first, but if the left starts it, that would be so much fun because we would kill so many of them.
No, these are the guys who sit in their house and fucking fantasize about break-ins so they can kill the fucking robber.
They're like, just give me an excuse. They're like going around like, I know these people. And so like, it is kind of deranged, but also let's just acknowledge the fact that if you are a normal human being, sometimes you just want to kill people. That is like a true fact. And it doesn't mean you ever do kill people. Like way less than 1% of people are actually killing people. But it does mean that like sometimes you get pissed off and you're like, I wish I could fucking kill that guy. But it doesn't like, people need to get real and understand that like having that attitude of like, I wouldn't even care if that person died is very, very different from actually being violent and taking action to do that. There's so many like steps of moral conscience and like thinking about it and like, I would go to jail and, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Wait, so is right-wing violence greater than or comparable to left-wing violence? Or is it all sort of just nihilistic?
I think right-wing violence is slightly greater.
I mean, if you count like,
data, but
like the Oklahoma City bombing is
yeah, that was huge.
Yeah.
It was also one dude, and I think that's something we have to remember about the Charlie Kirk assassin. Like, it was one dude.
Yeah.
It wasn't a wave. It wasn't a movement. We don't have collective guilt over it. It's one dude, and it's kind of, you know, it's tragic. But we've had a lot of assassinate. I mean, Martin Luther King was assassinated by one dude.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a movement to assassinate black leaders. It was one dude. So, you know, we have to keep that in mind. And by the way, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, there were huge destructive riots that were much more like killed more people. So this is a trend.
That's because leftists are more violent. The left-wing guy dies, they riot, they kill. The right-wing guy dies, and it's all hold me back, bro.
It seems to me, from what I've seen from right-wingers on Twitter, is they're sort of making the same argument that Sam Harris makes about Islam, where it's like there is something about the ideology that poisons you.
Yeah, because, you know, you see this guy, you're a right-winger, you like this guy, he dies, and then it's like, on the bullet, it's like, die fascist, right?
Yeah.
And then that's very, like, psychically, you know, the feelings. But then you show them a graph, you show them a chart, and you're like, well, actually, it's decreased over time. Doesn't matter. Feelings don't care about your facts.
So everything I said was true, but here's the silver lining, is that yes, right-wingers are freaking out. Yes, they are going into this apoplectic craziness over, every leftist is going to kill me. Do you want to kill me? Are you trying to kill me right now? That is going to be good, because if you go back to the Martin Luther King riots, that was very bad for Democrats. Like, Nixon won that election in a landslide. So the thing is they're doing right now with Pam Bondi is she's going on TV like a dumb bimbo, and she's saying, well, actually, hate speech is not like free speech, and so we're actually going to make that illegal. And even conservatives are like, what the fuck? Like, we didn't actually vote. Or we thought like we were voting against cancel culture.
Charlie wouldn't have wanted this.
Yeah, Charlie, this is literally the opposite of what Charlie, I mean, to the extent that I give him any credit, it'd be like, that was his one thing, was free speech. And now she's saying, we're going to come down on hate speech. Like, even if that doesn't result in a law or an executive order, which probably would be challenged by the Supreme Court.
The hate speech she's referring to is not reacting to Charlie's death with enough severity.
Like doing that is and I've heard these clips that, like, you know, kids are always fucking recording their teachers in school, like for any little grubby little secret. And so there's this teacher who's on there and she's like, listen, violence is never okay. I don't condone it. Obviously, Charlie Kirk had these very, like, he said, like, Jews are pushing anti-white hatred. He said all these things are controversial, you know. And so, like, we obviously don't condone what he said either, right, class? But we also don't condone violence. So what happened was wrong. And conservatives are posting this, like, secret speech. Like, see, this is the leftist who wants to kill us.
That's such a fair thing to say.
Yeah, it has gone, they are, and this is the thing I was saying about humor and irony and danger and having fun and being sexy. Yeah. What they are saying about hate speech and defending Charlie Kirk, it's not sexy. They are becoming the victims and the crybabies and the snowflakes that they made fun of for years on the left. They are morphing into that. And so, you know, that's going to ultimately, I think, benefit Democrats in 2028. We'll see how that goes. But that's my silver lining. That's my optimism, is that basically
every assassination is like a shit test for who's going to lose their cool first. And whoever loses their cool looks worse.
It is. Yeah. And I mean, look, the thing is, so one of the things, I have this 12-part series on neuroticism and politics. So leftists are more neurotic. that is not necessarily a bad thing. Having zero neuroticism means like you are that Boston Dynamics robot that someone can kick to the ground and it will just get back up again.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't want to be at zero neuroticism. Zero neuroticism is being a slave, right? So obviously if you have extraordinarily high neuroticism, then, you know, it's the night before the big interview and you just stay up all night and you don't get any sleep and you know you're crazy and what exactly you're like that. So you don't want to be you want to be in a happy medium, right? And so leftists have slightly higher neuroticism than conservatives. What's interesting about that is on average, if you take someone with higher neuroticism, they're going to be more violent, right? Because you say something to them, they get upset, and
this guy's fucked.
Right.
I'm fighting him off constantly.
Right, exactly. And I could, you know, that's why I'm in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So if you just accept that, and we have data on this, neuroticism leads to violence. Leftists are more neurotic. Okay, leftists should be committing more violent crime and all of that things. And now I know people are going to be 1350 and they're in the chat or whatever. You can adjust for race on this, right? You can do all kinds of adjustments. If you just you isolate politics and you isolate neuroticism, personality factor, leftism clearly has a pacifying effect on people. When people are leftists, they are less violent than you would expect from their psychological profile of neuroticism. Whereas conservatives, who are much lower in neuroticism, like they're just chiller, they're like, whatever, dude, I drink a beer, I'm just hanging out. It's like they're per capita committing more violence. Richard Hanania just did a great article on this, coming out with, looking at red states and blue states on violence. Like, of course, we think of Republicans as tough on crime, Democrats as weak on crime. If you adjust for those demographics, and again, that's something that critical race theorists have been talking about for a long time. Like, we can't just be colorblind when we look at these things. And so there's been like this meme war between like Republicans and Gavin Newsom, and Republicans are like, California's chaotic and violent, we need the National Guard in there. And then Gavin Newsom's like, Mississippi has 3 times the crime rate. And then the guy in Mississippi is like, well, it's because of black people. And it's like, okay, we're coming full circle back now to, CRT. That is an important thing to understand. It's something that I think has been like an implicit factor. I don't know at one point, because I think there does have to be some kind of like, obviously when you're talking about conservatives being like, oh, you're gonna kill me because I'm white, like obviously when you have CRT or the leftist perspective on race, then you're going to like, that's the impression people have gotten, is it's like anti-white, white genocide and things like that. And then on the right wing, the traditional thing has been like, oh, we're colorblind, we don't see race, it doesn't exist. And so I'm hoping for some kind of like, I don't know if it's anti-centrist fusionism or what happens, but I think like what I'm hopeful for is that people can be a little bit more like bluntly honest, a little less overly sensitive about those sorts of subjects in a way that, acknowledges there are these problems. Because I think, I was just writing an article about like, I think a lot of where that impression of anti-whiteness comes from is like, you go back to like a Trayvon Martin, a George Zimmerman, George Floyd, that whole period from like 2011 to 2020, where there was just like so much, there was an acknowledgement that there were problems, like there's police brutality and so on. But then the reaction to that was like very, kind of like, oh, okay, well, I guess if like people are rioting, then that's, I guess, justified. And my opinion is that no matter how big an injustice something is, like let's say, Charlie Kirk, gets assassinated or something. Okay, you're like, for hypothetical sake. So if that happens, like that doesn't then justify you to like go burn down a city or something, right? And I'm glad the right wing hasn't done that, right? That hasn't been their tradition to do that. But that is never justified. And I think there needs to be a left in the wake of BLM, because people have a very strong memory of that.
Yeah.
It was basically a nationwide Ferguson. If you talk to anyone who lives in the St. Louis area about that, like they remember that. That's like in their bones now. And it does create like more anti-black racism to allow a riot to get out of control than to look a little bit racist at first and be like, yeah, you know what? We don't riot. Like we're going to shut that down. And that's how, 1992 Rodney King riots, like, people were on the left, like Democrats were a lot more comfortable with like, okay, the president wants to like shut down the riot. Like we understand, because you have peaceful protests, you have rioting, and they're very different. So I think that's one of the things that Democrats need to do to make white people feel safe, and it's not an anti-white party. It's to say, like, yeah, we totally still do believe in racial justice, we believe in equality, but yeah, rioting is a no-go, and that breaking the law is a no-go, and we actually do need to like come down on it. I think if you look at the Biden administration, the trends in violent crime and so on were on the downhill. So I think that, in terms of the performance and the statistics, he did well, but it's an image problem. Like you said, it's not a statistics problem. I'm not going to show a graph to right-wingers and be like, see, Biden, he decreased the crime, and therefore, you should vote Democrat.
Yeah.
No, people need to feel like Democrats are Dirty Harry, like Clint Eastwood. He's going to be like, do you feel lucky, kid? Like, this hardcore. And that's what Bill Clinton did. When he passed the crime bill, he called them super predators. Maybe got a little bit implicitly racist, whatever. But like, it's ultimately better for black people. It ultimately decreases racism.
Yeah.
It's better for everybody.
Interesting.
So you need those kind of waves of left-wingers who are like law and order, tough on crime, to win elections and to make the country better.
I mean, I don't know if you might know this off the top of your head. I've been seeing this a lot around recently of the whole like 1350 thing.
Yes.
The percentage of the black population that commits the most crime is also like so much smaller than like, because that stat is like, oh, all black people commit crime.
It's really
no, it's like 1%.
Right.
Are constant repeat offenders.
Right.
If you got rid of that or like imprisoned that 1%, crime would
and
go
that
down
1%
dramatically.
has schizophrenia because they're black and they're living in colder climates than they were used to, and so they didn't have enough vitamin D.
You're sort of like the perfect mixed race guy, because you're like threading the needle between being a violent schizophrenic criminal all the time and then just being like an influencer and a podcaster.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I've been culturally honkified, so it's keeping me in check.
Yes. Yeah, but no, one of the huge things we could do if we wanted to decrease black crime would be to desegregate the country. Because right now, where do the majority of black people live? They live in inner city ghettos. Why do they live in inner city ghettos? It's because what I talked about before. Our welfare systems in this country are locally based. If you want money, you have to stay in a big blue city, because that's where the money is. If you move to Kansas, there's no money there. If we nationalized our welfare system and said, hey, you're poor, you're on welfare, you need housing, you need food, you need health care. We have all of that for very cheap in Kansas. And we could have a mass exodus of these people from these inner cities who don't have jobs. They might be on drugs. They might be involved in criminal gang activity. It is kind of a prison situation. It's not as bad as maybe actual prison, but it is a prison-like situation because they're so hyper-concentrated. Populations are dense. And we know that if you have problems with criminality, squeezing people together like sardines does not make that problem better. It actually makes it much worse. So we have the statistics on that too, that when you take black people and you move them out of urban zones into rural zones, a lot of those problems are alleviated.
Was it you who was telling me about, I don't know if it was Memphis or St. Louis, that has a literal line? Was this you, or was this like a YouTube show?
No, I mean, it's true. There, you can go to St. Louis. There is a line.
There's like an avenue you cross, and like the other side of the avenue is like the worst crime in the country.
Yes, I mean, it is incredible. And I've driven through Ferguson. I've driven through these places. It feels like a zombie apocalypse. Because what they do is they burn down the houses to collect insurance money.
Oh, yeah.
Because the houses are selling for $1. You cannot sell these houses. And why? Because there's still property tax. No one wants to pay a property tax on that house. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
So
Perverse incentives.
it's a lot of perverse incentives. And these problems can be solved if you take it from a national level. The St. Louis is literally a border city. It's hanging on Illinois and Missouri. Those states individually, they don't have the resources, the ability to like deal with the problem effectively and swiftly. And so it's like a rotting corpse on the side of the road. No one wants to clean it up because we don't, we have the resources. We just haven't united. And I think that like having that very like activist anti-poverty, like we want to solve these problems. We don't want a country that is letting people rot on the side of the street or whatever, having bombed out zombie places. We can intervene. And it's not even necessarily about just giving people more money. It's about removing the perverse incentives that are keeping them there. And specifically those welfare incentives, it's like a toilet bowl, and they're all being like sucked and drained into the specific spot because that is where money is. Have you ever seen like someone feeding pigeons or something or other animals, and then they start fighting over the food and whatever? That's almost the situation we have going on with poor Americans. Is we have like this feed that we're like, oh, okay, go into this like ghetto, and then they're like all stuck there in a terrible environment. There's also peer effects, right? So if you're a kid and you go to school and all of the kids in that school have like single moms and they're on drugs and all that thing, and everyone's in a gang, and you're super saturated in that peer effect. I mean, children are impressionable, and the people who they're most impressionable for are their peers, not their parents, not the teachers, their peers. So if you concentrate kids in those environments, in those schools, you're basically breeding them for that dysfunction to continue. If you take those kids out, you have a different result.
Schools are funded at the district level from property taxes as well.
Yes.
So it's
exactly.
even worse.
Exactly. And so my idea is that really we need to be desegregating people as much as possible, while at the same time understanding that in cities, like we essentially what is financial segregation. So instead of racial segregation or religious segregation, we say we're going to use zoning law to pump up the price of these houses so much that no one can afford to live here. And so we're going to maintain the character of the neighborhood. Yeah. And you have this in San Francisco, where it should be like one of the biggest cities on the planet, but instead it's like all this single family housing as far as the eye can see. And the reason for that is because it jacks up the price.
I think they approved like 100 new builds or something, like something impossibly low.
Yeah, it's scary how many times like California the state legislature has passed some bill that's like, we did it, guys. We finally fixed housing. And then like you just look at the statistics. It's like, well, clearly you didn't. Clearly you are still building less housing. And it matters for the Electoral College because people are leaving California. They get less electoral votes. People are moving to Texas. It gets more electoral votes. That swings elections. You have a close election, that's going to swing elections. So it is, I mean, shout out to Ezra Klein, Abundance, all those people trying to
I'm getting very
do
left
that.
Yimby vibes from
you.
Yeah.
We got to be Yimbys.
Who was the presidential candidate? Was this Andrew Yang who had this idea? The American Exchange, where when you finish high school, there's a program where like if you're born in the Hamptons, for a year you can go like live in Detroit, and then vice versa. And it was this high school program where it's like you can, or like you do a semester of high school in like a different city.
When can we finally say Yang was right about everything? When can we finally say it? When he lost, it broke me.
Yeah. Well, there's some interesting. I mean,
he was gonna make tax day a holiday. He was gonna make the tax collection to be a holiday.
I can't hear another word.
Yeah, Andrew. I mean, there's an interesting phenomenon going on with Asian Americans where we are going to have to stop using that term. Like, it's going to become a dead term. In the same way that if you go back far enough in American history, like people didn't even really, they said Latins. He's a Latin, in like the 1950s or something like that. They didn't have, like, they would just be lumped in like, what's that, the old 1950, I Love Lucy, and her husband is like Puerto Rican, and it's not even like considered like transgressive or an interracial marriage or anything, because people just weren't even like conscious of like that cultural conflict.
Yeah.
And so eventually, but there were enough Hispanics that they finally got their own identity in the census, and that's going to have to happen with Asian Americans, because we're going to have enough, East Asian people, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and we're going to have enough South Asian people. This has already kind of happened in Canada, but the United States is sort of lagging behind, and we're just saying Asians. But it's like, no, these are very different cultural backgrounds. And the way that manifests is you have Nikki Haley, you have Vivek Ramaswamy, you have Kash Patel, you have these Indian Americans, Usha Vance, who came here very recently, like their parents immigrated within the last 30 years, and they were already like vying for the top spot. Like they're already trying to become president. Andrew Yang, he didn't do as well. And so there's that pattern going on. It's an interesting cultural pattern. It's not good or bad, but I think that does, like, people talk about all these demographic factors that make someone electable or not. Oh, is it a man? Is it a woman? Is it black? Is it white? I think the fact that he is East Asian, I think actually, and to get even like deeper into why people have these biases, you can look at like dating app data.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, when one person of one race swipes on another person of another race,
Oh,
what's the response rate?
yeah.
And so
Classic.
like and it's an interesting question of why that is, but it is something I think it's just something to be honest about and to acknowledge is that does, I mean.
Because an Asian woman, black man's the rarest, I believe.
Probably something like that. But the wonderful thing about mass immigration is we can keep getting more categories to add. We can get, Australian Aboriginals. We get Papua New Guineans.
Let's not go crazy.
But you're pro super. No, what did you call it? Like just the brown. Like everyone mixes.
One of each race in a little suburb.
So I'm not a transhumanist. I'm gonna call it right now an anamorphist because
you just know that if you call yourself a transhumanist, I wouldn't like it.
I'm not gonna because I have these problems where people think that transhumanism is about clankers and robots and Elon Musk and chip in the brain, and it's so stupid. The best thing that we could do to advance human civilization beyond anything we've ever seen before is biotech, changing biology, DNA.
Yeah.
Like you've seen those little like cloning sheep and whatever.
Yeah.
We could solve the birth rate crisis if we could just like pay $1 million and have like 1 million babies. Like if we could have factories for babies, that is so much more. And then you can love it or hate it. You can think it's disgusting and weird and so on. But like that's so much more impactful than ChatGPT. It's so much more impactful than like, oh, there is a robot that looks like a human and it can almost do things. Like, why not just make a fucking human, you know?
Yeah.
And so we can like, we're on the cusp of that. Like we have done this with animals, artificial wombs.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the big, and again, I understand people think I'm crazy. People think I'm like Dr. Frankenstein.
No, I like this. I like this future much better than the clanker future.
Yes.
I want a biological future of flesh.
Yes.
And we can use tech on the flesh, but the flesh has to reign supreme.
Yes.
I also like that a lot more than the idea. Like it really okay. I'm very pro change, and in the same way, it disgusts me to think that my children will walk into a Walmart and see Star Wars toys. My father walked into a supermarket.
We should be
in
the
70s.
Star Wars aliens. That's what I'm advocating.
But
for.
in
Make Star Wars aliens real.
But in the same way, imagine in the year 2150, someone getting canceled for saying the N-word, right?
Yeah.
Also horrible. Like we knew. I think like race is something ultimately we are going to like have to move past.
Well,
and we have in ways that I don't think people really understand. Like I was gonna say this earlier about immigration, right? Have you watched The Sopranos? There's racial conflict in The Sopranos about Italians and whites. Like that recently, it was like, what? I'm fucking Italian. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now it's like the idea of like, I'm 27. I never grew up in a world where like Italians were seen as different than white people. Right? In the same way the Irish were once seen as not white by the British. So we've already moved through all these racial barriers and become like white people is like Germanic, French, Scandinavian. There's such a big group. Right? So there's a world where we move past race entirely, where everyone is sort of mixed race in some way.
I'll do a well actually on the white thing. There were interracial marriage laws on the books, never affected the Italians, never affected the Irish. So there was a legal definition. Now, people disagreed with it, obviously. There were Nordicists who believed that only blonde-haired, blue-eyed people from Scandinavia or whatever were white.
Yeah.
But in terms of the United States government recognizing white as a category, the Irish and Italians are always allowed to bone, the Germans and the French or whatever.
Okay.
So that is well, actually. But I would go further than that and make a less pedantic point about racism and identity and speciation, is that I actually want a future with more racism, but not the kind of racism that we have today. Because the kind of racism we have today is really lame.
Yeah.
It's really petty. It's like, well, I'm a poor white guy, but you're a poor black guy. We don't like each other. Or whatever, whatever the black equivalent of that is like, oh, you don't understand me because I'm black and you're white. It's like actually you guys are not that different.
Yeah.
Like you're both kind of very similar actually, and that's lame. And so what I want to do with anamorphism is I want to create new races, entirely new races of people that we've never seen before. And some of them are going to be
horrible,
retarded.
Yeah.
And some of them are going to be pretty fucking awesome.
We've been saying this.
Yeah.
We need to create a race of the Scrimblow Brimblow. And everyone can agree that we fucking hate the Scrimblow Brimblow. They're filthy. They're greedy. They shit everywhere. We hate the Scrimblow
And I will
Brimblow.
tell you, in Africa, if you go to the Congo... In the jungles of the Congo, there are tribes of pygmies, and they are very short. They're like 5 or 4'10". They're extremely short, And there are Bantu people who we would just describe as black, and they are like a foot taller than these pygmy peoples, and they literally have slavery. Like they enslave these people, and there are interviews you can go of like white women going into the Congo jungle, and they're like, so like, why are you enslaving these people? And they're like, speaking Congolese, and they're like, because they're like animals. Like, look how they dress. Look where they live. And it's like, and we're looking at that like, bro, you live in a tin shack and you're like making fun of his mud hut. Like, really? Like you're wearing like some Adidas like flip flops and he's wearing a skirt made out of grass. It's like, you're not that different. But for them, yeah, that is their scrim-blow, blim-blow.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, Brogan has to leave at 5, so we have to move on to the debate portion.
All right.
But this was great conversation.
Excellent.
And I don't know. I think you're doing something very interesting where you have the moxie to observe and interface with a lot of the stuff that right wingers are bringing up, but then not coming to the same conclusions as them, and then that gives you a sort of leftist Nick Fuentes edge to you, I think.
Yeah.
So I'll take it as a compliment.
It is very interesting. But now you have to debate to the death.
All
so
right,
we
let's
gotta
do it.